I want to thank everyone for joining us today for the New Jersey Child Care Facilities Improvement Program with the NJEDA. I'm Caitlin Giles McCormick. I want to touch base real quick. We do have a very large turnout, which we're very excited about. We are going to get started now. I'm going to shift things over to Tara Colton, who is our NJEDA Executive Vice President of Economic Security. Tara, take it away.
Thanks, Caitlin, and good morning, everyone. We are so thrilled to have, more than 800 people and rising joining us today. I think clearly speaks to the power and importance of this program. We're going to go through a few slides now. If you go to the next slide, please, just to provide an overview of who you'll be hearing from, what you'll be hearing about, and how today's session is going to flow. So again, I'm Tara Colton. I'm Executive Vice President for Economic Security here at the EDA. My portfolio of programs includes our programs to support the childcare sector. I also am honored to help lead our programs to support food security, as well as initiatives to support maternal and infant health and workforce development. So we have a broad array of programs here at the ADA. We're going to be diving deep today into the new Child Care Facility Improvement Program. You're going to be hearing from my extraordinary colleagues, Alex Himmel, who is our Senior Advisor for Childcare. As you'll hear when Alex starts, she is a former early childhood teacher herself, a former center director, a New Jersey native, and has spent nearly 2 decades working directly with childcare providers. So we're really thrilled she's here, as well as Emily Apple, our program manager for economic security, who has been spearheading the development of the program design that we'll be rolling out today. This session is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the EDA website. All the slides that we're presenting today will be posted on the EDA website. We have as Caitlin mentioned, a significant number of resources that we've developed that are posted on the EDA website. We're going to be walking you through kind of where we are, how we got here, and then really spending the bulk of our time talking about the eligibility providers, the projects that you want to pursue, the contractors, and then importantly, how to begin preparing for the application. This is not your only chance. This is not the only set of information that we'll be providing, and all of this information is available in multiple forms. You do not need to scribble everything down while we're talking or take photos with your camera. This will all get posted. So please know we are working to try and make this information available as widely as possible. So there's a number of ways that you can follow up and ask questions or get more information after this. I also wanted to note that we have a representative from the EDA today who is able to answer questions in Spanish in the Q&A, and that is something that will be available. Alberto, if you wanted to just come on for a moment and share that message in Spanish, that would be great.
Buenos días a todos. Si tienen alguna pregunta en español, con mucho gusto se la podemos responder. Simplemente escriban su pregunta en español y yo trataré de monitorear para hacerle llegar esa pregunta a los panelistas. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Tara.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Alberto. So as you can see, we are working hard to try and make as much available in as many different fashions as we can. So this is a set of resources that was emailed out. These are all on our website, and we're going to be going into these in more detail. So these are the supporting materials that we're making available to all of you. The goal is to provide as much context and assistance as we can to make the process of applying for these grants as clear and straightforward as possible. So again, this is just reminders about all the things that we have developed. We want to make sure that you know about them and that they're accessible. So this URL's website that is listed here, it's also been posted in the chat. Encourage you to bookmark it or visit it often. On the right-hand side, there are a number of resources. So we just wanted to make sure you knew where on our site to get to them. Again, you can always call, chat, email, follow up if you can't find them or have any issues with that. I'm going to give just some quick framing, and then we're going to start getting into some details. So we have, as of right now, 965 people logged on. We are so excited that you're here. We want to make sure that the folks who are participating, whether you are childcare providers, childcare resource and referral agencies, advocates, foundations, parents, that folks understand what we are talking about today. We're going to give a little more context in a moment, but just to ensure that folks are able to make sure that they know kind of where we're headed. So as we're going to share in a moment, we are today focused on phase 1 of our child care facility improvement program, which is a crucial part of Governor Murphy's commitment to a stronger and fairer New Jersey and to strengthening the state's child care sector. Some key pieces we wanted to emphasize before we dive in. For the first phase of this program, which is what we are walking you through today, there are significant eligibility criteria we want to make sure that you all know about. The first is that for this phase, the eligible applicants are child care centers that serve at least 6 children that were licensed by the New Jersey Department of Children and Families as of June 4th, 2021, which is the end of the COVID public health emergency. Family child care homes or home child care providers are not eligible for this phase, but they will be eligible for future phases. For this phase, providers need to offer care for at least 6 hours a day. We know there are many providers that offer before and after school care. You may be eligible, but it will depend on the total amount of care offered. The next piece is that in order to be eligible, at the time you apply, a provider needs to have enrolled, either at the time of application or in the prior 12 months, at least 1 child who is receiving assistance through the Federal Child Care Assistance Program, often called subsidy. This is something that is administered through the child care resource and referral agencies. We're going to be getting into this into a lot more detail. One of the nuances here we want to emphasize is that if you are a provider that is eligible or approved to accept children who receive subsidy, but do not currently have any children enrolled, you would not be eligible unless there was a child enrolled by the time of application. Head Start programs may be eligible if they are licensed centers with DCF and also have at least 1 child receiving CCAP enrolled. And the applicant entities can be for-profits or nonprofits. They cannot be school districts. However, if you are a provider that operates a program within a school building, you may be eligible. So we're going to give you a lot more context on all of these, but these are just some highlights of what we wanted to emphasize. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was a sort of quick snapshot. Now we're going to get much more into the why we're here, and then my incredible colleagues are going to talk about what we're doing. Next slide, please. So what is the EDA? For 995 people on here, I would imagine if we took a poll of you, many of you had not heard of the EDA. A year, 2 years, 5 years ago, maybe a year, maybe a day, 2 days, 5 days ago. The EDA is a state agency under Governor Murphy's leadership that is focused on driving the state's economic competitiveness and building a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy. I think it's really important to emphasize that we are the state's economic and business agency, and we are, as you're about to hear, putting tens of millions of dollars directly into the child care sector. I'm really proud that my role as Executive Vice President of Economic Security reinforces the fact that childcare is crucial to our economic infrastructure, to our economic future, to our ability as a workforce and as a community to succeed. And so this is something that is central to our mission, and we're really proud to be forging new ground here. Next slide. The legislature and Governor Murphy signed a law last year that appropriated $100 million in federal American Rescue Plan dollars. There's going to be a lot of acronyms, a lot of jargon in here. You'll see in our very extensive frequently asked questions, there is also a glossary with details on what a lot of these terms mean. Again, you can ask questions now or later. We are doing our best to try and lay this out as clearly as we can. But as you'll see, that funding that Governor Murphy signed into law put forth more than $54 million to our agency, to the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. And we work very, very closely with our colleagues, many of whom you probably know and interact with more than you do with us, the Department of Children and Families, or DCF, and the Department of Human Services. So what is on the radar now here at EDA is a growing portfolio of funding and programs to support the childcare sector. We want to emphasize that what we are working on and what we're going to be walking you through today is one piece. It's a critical piece, but it's one piece of a broader commitment from our administration and from the EDA and the other state agencies that we work with to support and raise up New Jersey's childcare sector. What we are focusing on here today is this one with the dotted line around it, the Childcare Facilities Improvement Program. But you'll see, thanks again to the governor's leadership and our partnership with the legislature, there are a number of resources that are being deployed to support childcare here at EDA, and that continues to grow. We are now at over $132 million that EDA is deploying or has deployed to support the state's childcare sector. That's pretty staggering. So what we are here to talk about specifically today is the first phase of the Childcare Facilities Improvement Pilot Program. It's a mouthful. We have $15 million that we have announced we will make available, and we have the ability to increase that to 25 million, depending on the demands that we receive in terms of grant applications. This is something that we see as crucial to strengthening the childcare sector for several reasons. Before I go into again, sort of some of the nuts and bolts about what we're doing, I wanted to pause for a moment and just talk about why. There is, as I said, an economic imperative here that high quality childcare, affordable, accessible childcare truly matters to working parents, working families, employers. There is a economic imperative of making childcare something that is available to all children that need it, but also that the quality of that childcare is second to none. I've shared this with other folks before. I'm a working mom myself. This program is very meaningful to me personally and professionally. I have two kids, ages 9 and 6. They have been in 3 different childcare centers. They have been in family childcare, home-based. They are now in after school in our public schools. When I look at the models that exist around the country, and certainly here in New Jersey, about quality and facility improvements at childcare providers, everywhere my kids have gone looks like the after picture. None of them look like the before picture. And I'm very grateful that I've been able to put my kids in environments that I felt were of the quality that I wanted or they deserved. But all children deserve that, and all parents want that. And so there's a fundamental inequity in the fact that I was able to do that because I could afford it, because of my inherent privilege, because of my race, because of all of these factors that afforded me that discretion to be a kind of a selective customer, for lack of a better word. That should be the baseline for all children in the state. And that's, to me, that's, when the governor talks about a stronger and fairer New Jersey, I think that's really highlighting what that means. So I told my kids I was going to talk about them today. I told them I was giving a speech to 1,000 people. I didn't really know how else to explain it. For levity, I will share that I told my 6-year-old that I was doing this and that I talk about her. And she said, "Are you going to tell them that my hobby is eating chocolate?" So now I have told 1,000 people what she wanted me to tell them, so I can go home and get a smile from her later. But I wanted to just share that because I want you to understand that, there is a personal element to this, but there is also a very real economic condition that we are trying to foster here at the EDA. And we see these grants as significantly additive and strategic. The one other point I wanted to make before we dig into some of these, again, these specifics, we're going to talk about this in detail as well. We've worked so closely with our colleagues at Department of Human Services and Department of Children and Families. The funding that we are making available is very significant. It's very large. It's a major commitment from the Murphy administration and the legislature and all of us here at EDA to strengthen the state's childcare sector, but it's only one part of the puzzle. And one of the reasons that we have developed this facility improvement program is so that the other funding that childcare providers receive, most significantly the stabilization grants and the recruitment and retention funding that's coming through Department of Human Services, as well as other funding, tuition payments, whether it's through subsidy or through parent payments, that can be used for other things. We want you to use our money for facility improvements because we know that it's very rare that this money comes along. And so as we hear about many of the macro pressures on the state's childcare system, especially around compensation and wages and staff retention, part of the vision here is that our money, these facility grants, will be able to be used for things that you can't normally spend money on. And then the money that is available through other resources can be used in particular on things like staff recruitment and compensation. So this is an intentional design, and we look forward to seeing how it plays out. Just going to give you a snapshot, and then I think I am almost done with my section. Sort of walked through a number of these already, but just as a quick snapshot, the money we are making available is going to be grants, money we give you. You don't pay it back. It's not a loan. It's not, we pay for half of it. We give it all to you. It covers the full cost of a project, and the amount we will provide is between $50,000 and $200,000. Again, this does not have to be repaid. We will, in addition to the money we are making available for these grants, we know that sometimes, as anyone who's dealt with a construction or facility project knows, sometimes costs go above what you expected. So we have built in essentially a buffer for what are called cost overruns if costs exceed what you expected. As emphasized, we are only providing funding in this first phase to licensed childcare centers. Again, registered family childcare homes in the future will be available. There will be funding available. All told, we have about $92 million that we will be making available for facility improvements for New Jersey's childcare providers. This is just for the first portion of that. Again, just to reiterate, providers to be eligible have to enroll at least one child in the past 12 months receiving CCAP or subsidy. We have set aside, reserved 40% of the funding we have available for providers who are located in what are called opportunity zone eligible census tracts. I know that's a mouthful. I know that many of you may be in them and not know, or may not know what it is. We have tools to help you determine if you are located in one. This is a federal designation. This is something that, again, with a commitment to equity and improving opportunity for all New Jerseyans, which is sort of the mantra we hear from Governor Murphy, we are committed to making sure that resources go to providers that have been in communities that have historically had disinvestment due to structural racism, redlining, a number of the reasons that communities have been unable to tap into resources. And so we are working to set aside 40% of this funding for providers in those geographies. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, and then I think I'm turning it over to Emily, is there is no cost. This is free to apply. There are other programs that exist at EDA or maybe other government programs where you do have to pay a fee. There's no fee here. However, we are going to walk you through what it takes to apply, and it's quite complex. So we want to make sure that you don't just submit an application quickly and not have the requisite information and then find out that it wasn't eligible. So we're trying to sort of strike that balance. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily. I'm going to dip into the questions in chat, and if I need to chime back in on anything, I'm happy to do so. And again, as a working mom and a working professional, thank you for all that you do every day and all that you do to care for our youngest children. We are grateful and excited to be working with you.
Thanks so much, Tara, and thank you all. The eligibility for this phase of the program, and I want to emphasize this is for this phase. As Tara mentioned, we have over $90 million to invest in facility improvements across for child care centers across New Jersey. So just if you don't meet the eligibility criteria for this phase of the program, there may be subsequent phases in which you qualify. So just to reiterate, this phase is limited to child care centers licensed by the Department of Children and Families. You must have had an active license as of June 4th, 2021, which is dated toward the end of the public health emergency. So while we appreciate all of the efforts that have been made by new child care centers, as of this phase, you had to be open as of June 4th, 2021 and licensed by DCF. This is also only open to entities that offer care at least 6 hours a day. So we understand there are many early drop-off and aftercare centers that are licensed by DCF, but may not offer 6 hours of care per day. So this is really intended for full-time child care centers in this phase. Importantly, and I know I've seen a lot of questions in the chat about this, centers have to currently enroll or enroll in the past 12 months at least one child receiving assistance through the DHS Child Care Assistance Program. For those of you that are wondering, what is the Child Care Assistance Program? Is it Work First? Is it some other program? It is through your local child care resource and referral center, or CCR&R. If you have a question about whether you are serving a child that is receiving subsidy through this particular program, I would recommend talking to your local CCR&R representatives who can help clarify that information for you. And this is dated to the date of your application. So we would recommend, if you are authorized to accept a child receiving CCAP, but do not yet have a child enrolled, we would actually recommend holding off until you have a child enrolled, because we will not be able to approve your application without proof that as of the date you applied for this program, you had a child enrolled that received CCAP. So you can work with your CCR&R to get a child enrolled who is receiving subsidy through this program. This is open to for-profits and nonprofits, so lots of different structures and types of organizations. You can own or lease your space. We'll go into this in more detail. If you lease your space, you will require the landlord's approval. You have to commit to maintain your license with the Department of Children and Families for 4 years following the date of the facility improvement at the location where the facility improvement took place. You have to commit to enrolling in Grow NJ Kids, the state's quality ratings system, within 1 year of receiving an award from NJEDA if you are not already enrolled. If you're already enrolled, then you don't have to do anything additional. You have to be in good standing with a number of different state agencies, including the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Department of Environmental Protection, Division of Taxation, Department of Children and Families, and Department of Human Services. This is limited if you are a child care center with multiple locations that operate under a single employer identification number or taxpayer identification number, referred to as an EIN. You are limited to 2 applications, and each application is tied to facility improvements at a single location. So I saw a question in the chat about aggregating costs around multiple locations for a single application. That is not how this program operates. Right now, it is 1 single application per location. And if you have multiple locations operating under a single EIN, you're limited to 2 applications in this phase. If you have multiple locations that operate under independent or separate EINs, then you may submit an application for each of those independent locations under their respective EIN. So that's who is eligible. Who is not eligible in this phase? And again, we want to emphasize we have a lot of money. We're only dispersing $25 million right now, up to $25 million right now, because we recognize that there is need across the sector. And so if you don't see yourself reflected in this eligibility criteria, there may be funding available for you in future phases. In fact, The next phase will be open to registered family childcare homes. We are not at this time making funding available for registered family childcare homes. After school providers or people that do, early drop off, if you're not providing 6 hours of care a day, you would not qualify. As of now, Head Start providers, unless they are also serving children receiving CCAP, there are very complex federal requirements. We recognize this, and so we're working through that with our federal partners and anticipate making funding available to Head Start providers in future phases. School districts are not eligible to apply, though if you are a licensed childcare provider providing care on a school campus, the school district would essentially be your landlord. So you as the licensed provider could apply, but the school district could not apply on your behalf because landlords are not able to apply directly for this program. And if you are eligible to enroll children that are receiving CCAP but don't currently have a child enrolled, you would not be eligible for this program. So we really encourage you to work closely with your CCR&Rs to get a child enrolled before you apply for this program because it is tied to the date of your application. Next slide. So again, just to reiterate, what is the Child Care Assistance Program? This is a program that is funded federally, administered by the New Jersey Department of Human Services, Division of Family Development, and then passed down to be administered through the local child care resource and referral agencies. This is specifically for income eligible parents who are in school or working to help them pay the cost of childcare. You may hear this referred to as a childcare subsidy, federal subsidy, CCR&R subsidy. There's lots of ways that folks have heard this referred to. We recommend, if you have questions about this program, reach out to your local CCR&R. They are the experts on this and can help you navigate and figure out if you currently have a child enrolled, or if you don't, how you get a child enrolled, if you're set up to enroll children receiving subsidy through this program. And now I will pass it over to my colleague, Alex Himmel, who will talk more about the project eligibility.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here. What we want to do here is clarify for everyone what we're talking about in terms of a project versus eligible uses. So when we're referring to a project, and you'll see this referred to in the application as well, we're talking about the entirety of the work that's going to be done as it relates to the improvements that you're applying for. So it's inclusive of all of the construction, all the labor, demolition, equipment needed, materials, etc., inclusive of all the costs, and that makes up a project. And a project within an application, you're applying for at one specific location, one facility. Within the project, there is an extensive list of eligible uses that's posted on our website, and a project may be a combination of a variety of different uses. So to use the example here, Happy Kids Child Care Center, as they're putting together their application, they've decided that they'd like to use our funding to replace all the windows in their facility, paint all of their classrooms, replace the flooring, and install a shed for their outdoor materials. So each of those is considered an eligible use, and so this project would be inclusive of 4 eligible uses. What we want applicants to consider here as they're putting together their projects is a couple things. One is the unique opportunity of this kind of funding being available to the childcare community, and leveraging that opportunity, and really thinking big and dreaming of all the things that you've always wanted or have been desperately thinking about how can I fix X, Y, and Z, well, now is your opportunity to get as much done as possible and maximize the grant awards, which again go up to $200,000. So we're really encouraging you all to think big and think broadly about the ways in which you're going to use this funding. So in terms of the project requirements, as we've mentioned several times, the projects must be between $50,000 and $200,000, and that grant amount would be for a single location. So if you have multiple facilities and will be submitting applications on behalf of each individual facility, each is eligible for up to $200,000. The costs that you're applying for are for prospective costs. So this is work that has not yet been started. It's work that's going to be completed in the future. If you, there were a lot of questions about this in the Q&A also about work that's already been done. Can you apply for this funding? And unfortunately, that's not allowable. So this has to be work that's going to be done in the future. The grant awards also need to cover the full cost of the facility improvement or your proposed improvement. So if you are hoping to blend this funding with something else, and because you have a project that's been quoted for more than $200,000, that's not going to be eligible under this grant. Not that you can't do additional work outside the $200,000, but the $200,000 has to, or up to $200,000 or whatever amount you're asking for, has to cover a complete project. When you're thinking about pulling your costs together, keep in mind that up to 20% of the total cost can be used for what we call soft costs. I'll get into what qualifies as soft costs in just a minute, but only up to 20% can be part of your budget. As we mentioned, all eligible uses in a project on your application are for a single location. All of the work is subject to prevailing wage and affirmative action, all of the work. And we're going to dig a little bit more into those requirements in just a moment. Your project will need to begin within a year of receiving your grant award from the EDA, and then completed within a year from the start of construction. We recognize that construction projects don't always go as planned. I heard Tara mention that earlier. And so in those cases, we want to work with grantees and sort of work with you on making whatever arrangements need to be made when those unforeseen circumstances are come your way. The other thing, the last project requirement I want to highlight here, and we'll dig into, is that all quotes and all work must be completed by a New Jersey Public Works contractor that's registered with the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Give me a moment, I'll dig into what that means exactly. So those are the project requirements. What is not allowable are projects that are less than $50,000. As I mentioned, no retrospective costs or reimbursement for work that's already been done. You may not combine this grant with other funding, as I mentioned earlier. And this is a very important piece we want to highlight for everyone here. Projects cannot replace existing infant and toddler spaces and reduce the overall number of infants and toddlers being served at your facility. If you have an empty space and you would like to turn that empty space into a new preschool classroom, that would be allowable or an eligible project. If you want to take an existing infant toddler space and turn that into a preschool classroom, that will not be an approved project. And we'd encourage you all to really dig into these lists. They're very broad. They cover a lot of different areas, and I would encourage you to look through that list when you have an opportunity. I'm actually going to pause right here because we have a special guest we would like to allow an opportunity to talk to you all. So I'll hand it over to Tara for the introduction.
I'm really thrilled to invite our CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, Tim Sullivan, who wanted to just share a few words. He wasn't able to join right when we started, but didn't want to get off the webinar without him having a chance to speak. So Tim, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Tara, and thanks to Alex and the entire team for everything you're doing. And I'll be brief because I know you're right in the middle of the good stuff that people tuned in to hear. And I don't know that I've ever been on a Zoom with 1,000 people before, so we must be up to something interesting. Thank you all for your interest in the program. I'll be really brief. Again, this is such an incredibly important initiative for Governor Murphy and our entire team here at the EDA. You've got great examples of leadership and the caliber of great folks that are working on this program who are leading this webinar. But this is such an incredible, if we were doing this 3 or 4 years ago, I think we would have been surprised to see the EDA playing a role in supporting the childcare sector. And I think one of the very, very, very limited few kind of upsides or important things we learned during the pandemic was that childcare is economic infrastructure. Period. End of sentence. If the last couple of years didn't make you realize how important good quality, affordable, reliable childcare is to the functioning of our economy, not to mention the future of our kids. And I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, one of whom's in, I don't know if they're on one of your centers. I don't know who's on the call, but she could be. I don't know who's on the phone, but I've been a proud participant in and customer of and parent in the childcare system. It's like the water or the power. If you turn it off, if you turn off childcare, nobody goes to work. The economy stops functioning. And layer on top of that the fact that every single kid in our great state deserves the same kind of care and facilities that everyone that people with all the resources in the world have access to. And so hopefully this program will begin to make a dent in bringing as many of our facilities that I'm sure are all run with love and care, but with a little bit more money could be even greater into sort of the next chapter of their history. So we're really excited about this. Cheers and kudos to Tara and Alex and Emily and Riley and everyone else who's running this program. And I'll shut up because again, I know you're all here to learn about the program, not to hear me chat a bit, but this is really important. This is a really important priority program, not just for the governor, but for our entire team here at the EDA and a really important part of our economic development strategy. So the only other thing I had mentioned before I shut up, we've got great partners at folks at places like Commissioner Edelman's team and Commissioner Edelman and her team at DHS, Commissioner Beyer at DCF and their great team, and lots of other folks who are helping us get this right, including Rob and his team at Labor. And so really a great group of interagency partners that are helping to make progress here. And in following the lead of some great legislative leadership from folks like Senator Ruiz, the majority leader, and others who have prioritized making sure this funding is available, because it takes a governor and a legislature to provide funding. And so Governor Murphy's got a huge priority here, but so does the legislature, including folks like Senator Ruiz. So again, now I will actually shut up and give the floor back to Alex, who's telling you all the good stuff about this program. Thanks so much, and appreciate the chance to visit with you for a few minutes.
Here is a list of the exterior facility improvements that are available, that are eligible, for this grant. So when we talk about eligible costs, they sort of fall into a couple different categories. You don't have to apply for all 3 types that I'm going to dig into. You could apply for hard costs only, hard costs and FFE, hard costs and soft costs, or all 3. But you cannot apply only for soft costs since they are capped at that 20% of the total grant. Hard costs are considered things like the actual construction work, the demolition, all of those kinds of things. And those costs are actually going to be paid directly to the Public Works registered contractors that will be doing the work at your site. So eligible soft costs that are covered by this funding include things like architect fees, permit fees, construction management, freight and shipping, and any sort of environmental assessments that need to be completed. And just another reminder that these costs are capped at 20% of all overall project costs. So in this example, you may not apply for more than $40,000 of a $200,000 improvement project in terms of eligible soft costs. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, FFE, is an allowable cost, as we were just talking about, but we really would like applicants to think carefully about whether this funding or other sources. I saw a lot of questions about this, the DHS ARP stabilization grant. So to think really carefully about leveraging all the funding that's available to you and how you might be able to purchase FFE and utilize these funds for the actual improvement work. What we really need to think about really carefully here is that there is no duplication of benefits. So for example, if you decide as part of this improvement project that you would like to buy new cubbies for the classroom that you're renovating, and you pay for those with your ARP stabilization grant, and then apply for funding for those same cubbies using our funding, that's considered a duplication of benefits and is not allowable. Sometimes people refer to it as double dipping. And so we want everyone to be really thoughtful as they're putting together their projects and thinking about the funding that's available and how they can use it while being fiscally responsible. The other highlight here, unlike the construction costs that are going to be paid directly to the public works contractors, is that FFE will be reimbursed to you. So applicants and grantees, approved grantees, will have to pay for those first, and then EDA will reimburse you for those costs. So we'll pay you back. FFE is considered a movable item that has no permanent connection to the structure or utilities. They need to have a lifespan of at least 3 years and cost no less than $100. And there is a specific resource that we have available on our website that digs into even more details about what qualifies as furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We want to encourage you to check it out on our website when you're ready to dig into that level of detail. The other reminder that is a really important and critical one, certainly if approved and before you are getting construction underway, is for you to refer to the licensing manual, specifically subchapter 5, which talks about facility requirements and what you need to do as a licensee in terms of communicating the work that's being done and what's allowable and unallowable in terms of when work can be done, to make sure that you're staying in compliance with all licensing regulations and not getting yourselves into unnecessary trouble. So this is just a reminder. Okay, contractor requirements. This is the fun part. At the time of your application and throughout your project, when the work is being completed, it must be completed by a Department of Labor Public Works registered contractor. And they need to abide by New Jersey prevailing wage and affirmative action requirements. There is a list of registered contractors that lives on the DOL website, and we have some resources available to you to find that list and how to navigate that list. And so there will need to be some work on the front end while you're developing your application to identify and establish a relationship with the contractor or contractors if you're going to need to use more than one. And they all need to be registered contractors with the Department of Labor. They have to agree, the contractors have to agree to pay prevailing wage. And the prevailing wage requirement for any other construction contracts at the facility that is awarded this funding remains in place for 2 years after the agreement with the EDA. And then if contractors have 4 or more total employees, they must abide by the affirmative action requirements. And as I mentioned, multiple contractors or even subcontractors must meet the Public Works registered contractor requirements here. There is a specific resource about for contractors on how to help them maintain compliance. So if you want to share that with your contractors, please go ahead and do that. So the registered contractor list is this first image. There is an option to search it by city or specialty. You can sort it by the county that you live in, the specialty of the contractor. And so this is a good place to start. The other resource that we're going to make available to applicants is a list of interested Public Works registered contractors. So we've been working really closely with the Department of Labor, and we're getting information out to these Public Works registered contractors that this funding is available and that members of their community, you all, the applicants, are potentially going to be reaching out to them to assist with this work. And so this list that's going to live on our website on the Child Care Facilities Improvement page of the EDA website will eventually have a list of contractors who say, please call me. I'm interested in working on these kinds of projects. So, so there's a couple different resources that will be available to you to find your contractor and identify them ahead of time, because their information and their quotes will be part of the application process, which we'll dig into in just a second. Another resource that we have available, so our project idea board is a way for you all to look at your facility through the lens of the eligible project list, and have an opportunity to start to jot down your ideas and your thoughts around all the different things that you may want to do. I think I might be having some video problems again. So I'll just finish this last thought and then perhaps pass it off to someone else. So anyway, check out this resource. We hope it will help you sort of gather your thoughts and again, really maximize the funding that's available to you and apply for a lot of great work to be done at your site. Application requirements. Actually, I'm going to hand this back off to Emily. We're going to start to dig into the elements of the application, and I'll let Emily take it from here.
Thanks so much, Alex. So we expect the application will be released in October 2022. So in the next month or so, please continue checking our website for details. You can also sign up for the EDA newsletter. If you go to njeda.com and scroll to the bottom of the page, you can enter your email address so you can be subscribed for our updates. We also have customer care representatives available to assist you if you have any questions about the program, the application, anything. You can email our customer care line, use our chat bot, call the number. That includes assistance available in Spanish as well as 10 other languages if you email languagehelp@njeda.com with your information. The application itself will be available in English and Spanish. We expect to have all of our resources available on the on our webpage available in Spanish in the coming days. Alberto, maybe if you could take yourself off mute and translate that for everyone, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
La aplicación la vamos a tener disponible en español también, y esta presentación también la estamos preparando para tener en español. Lo que le sugerimos es que por favor nos siga nuestra página, que monitoree nuestra página web, donde vamos a publicar toda esta información en español y en otros idiomas también. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Alberto. And if you speak a language other than English or Spanish, we still have resources available to you. Please email languagehelp@njeda.com with your name, spoken language, telephone number, and the name of this program, and we will be able to assist you. Prior to the application launch, you can create an application at the NJEDA Online Application Center. That way you have a username and password ready to go if you don't already have one. So that is available at programs.njeda.com. If you applied for any other EADA program, including the Small Business Improvement Grant or any of our COVID emergency grants, you may already have an account, so please, you can recover your password or any other information using that site as well. We will be reviewing applications on a first come, first served basis based on the date of submission. That does not mean applications will be approved on a first come, first served basis. So we really encourage people to submit complete applications because that will reduce the number of times that back and forth with EDA staff. If you have any questions about how to complete your application, again, we have customer care representatives available to assist you. That said, if there are questions that come up during the application review process, we don't want to be in a position where we're automatically declining you because we have a question about the narrative that you wrote about your project. We want this to be a dialogue. We want to engage with you all and provide care and assistance to make sure that ultimately we're able to approve as many projects as possible that are going to improve the quality of childcare for children across the states and help all of your childcare facilities. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis until all of our funding is committed or 3 years from the date of the application opening, whichever is sooner. So we encourage folks to use this time before the application launches to look through our materials, start preparing your applications, but we also want to have full applications ready prior to submission. That way we're not in a position where we have to decline or that there's such an extended back and forth that, you know, it takes many, many months to get this approved. So definitely take a look at all of the resources on our website prior to submitting your application to make sure that you're submitting the strongest application that you can on the date that you submit. So again, you can sign into Microsoft portals. We're going to take you through sort of what the application looks like. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly. These slides will be available on our website for you to consult. We'll also, once the application is live, have screenshots of the application itself, walking you through every step of the way and every single page of how you can submit your application. So again, if you do not currently have a username and password, if you've never applied for any EDA programs, you can register If you have a username and password because you have applied to some EDA program before, but you forgot your username and password, as I do all the time for all the various things I sign up for, you can just click the forgot username and password. And once you've created it, we recommend that you write it down or keep it in a safe place because you'll need it in order to access your application. And this login will enable you to start your application, save it, come back to it later. You don't have to do the entire application in one sitting. This is really, you can start filling out things once the application becomes available and then add things later on as you're able to get them before you press submit. Don't have a new username and password, you'll need a valid email address, create your username and password. If you receive this message that you already have an account in our system, you can send yourself an invitation code to create a profile. You should look out for an email from CRM no reply at njeda.com. If you don't get a message, check your spam filter. Chances are that it is in there. We know that happens sometimes. Or you can always email our customer care team or call our customer care team for further support. So once you are emailed an invitation code, you can use the link to be able to activate it. These emails take a little while. They're not immediate. Allow 10 or 20 minutes before you call up our customer care team and say, I haven't gotten my email. Then you can call us for assistance. And then once you do that, you should be able to complete your registration. On this list, if you go to the NJEDA Online Application Center today, as you'll see, this is a snapshot of what we had. You will not see the Child Care Facilities Improvement Program Phase 1 on there. Again, our application will be launching in October. But once it is available, you can log in and then go to the application center and click on the link to start the child care facilities application. Next slide. There are a number of upload documents that you will need to have in order to complete your application. A full list of these documents and a full checklist can be found at our website. So again, you don't need to scribble all these down, but you will need a copy of your license, a copy of your formation documentation for your childcare business, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, LLC, sole proprietorship. There are different versions of these documents that we'll accept. Your federal tax ID number or employer identification number, taxpayer identification number. You will need to secure a tax clearance certificate that applies to both for-profit and nonprofit businesses from the New Jersey Division of Taxation. There are instructions on our website as to how you can do that in our FAQ. If you are a religiously affiliated entity, we're going to require a few more questions of you. And so there will be a PDF that you will need to download and then upload responses to. If you are a nonprofit, we'll need a copy of your IRS determination letter just to verify your nonprofit status. That can be found on the IRS website if you don't have a copy easily accessible. If your organization is engaged in political activities or lobbying, again, just another set of questions. It doesn't preclude you from participating, but we just have a few more questions that you'll need to respond to and upload a questionnaire. Evidence of your facility ownership or a copy of the lease if it's a lease space. If the facility is leased, a certification from your landlord approving the facility improvement projects that you're including in this application. You'll need to include a project description and justification, photos of where the space is taking place, a budget, a timeline. If you have any design documents because you've been working with an architect or something like that. An outline of your project costs, as well as including information about your contractor. So in your conversations with contractors, when you're getting quotes, you'll also need to secure a copy of their contractor certificate demonstrating their public works registration with the New Jersey Department of Labor, as well as quotes from those registered contractors. Again, the quotes have to come from public works registered contractors with the New Jersey Department of Labor. We cannot accept a quote from a contractor that is not registered with the Department of Labor. And we also require that the quote itself include information and consideration of prevailing wage rates. So there's a lot of guidance on our website. I realize that this is probably very overwhelming. This is all included in a checklist. We have lots of documents that you can provide to your contractors about what they need to consider when they're creating a quote for you. So please consult our website for more resources and more information, because we recognize that we're throwing a lot at you, but we want to make sure that everyone has the information they need to successfully complete this application. As I said, we have an application quick start guide for exactly this reason, to make sure that we have all of this information documented for you in one place. That's available on our website today. If you want to download that and start sort of checking the boxes for, I have this thing already, I have this thing already, oh, I need to email this person, or I need to go get this document. So you can begin filling that out in real time just to help you prepare for the application. Next slide. So the first thing we're going to ask you for is a copy of your DCF license. Again, you have to be licensed and have an active license number that was active on June 4th, 2021 or before, and offering full-time care for 6 or more hours a day. This is what your DCF license looks like. So, you know, if you have a document and you're not sure, or you're not sure where to find your DCF license, please contact the Office of Licensing as soon as possible. We'll require your license number. We're going to need you, in addition to uploading a copy of this license, you will have to type this license number into your application. Please make sure that you don't make any typos when you're doing this, because or else you could flag in our system that you are not in fact a licensed provider. So just make sure you're really careful when you're typing in things like your employer identification number, DCF license number, and all of that. Next slide. We'll be asking information for the primary point of contact for this application. So, you know, if you are the person who's filling out and wants to be contacted about the application, make sure that you put this contact information for yourself. If it's someone else on your team who we should be contacting, put their information in here. And then we will be asking questions about if you're legally authorized to submit the application, if you're the CEO. More common parlance in childcare for childcare providers would be center director, or executive director, what have you. So we will be asking for that information as well. Next slide. So again, we will be asking for the authorized representative to submit this application if the person that is submitting or the point of contact is not in fact authorized to submit on behalf of the child care center. Next slide. Again, CEO, owner, equivalent, center director, what have you. You can put this if your primary point of contact is not this representative. Next slide. Media contact, this is just in case there are communications related questions. We definitely have experience with getting a lot of positive press for our programs. We want to highlight the great work that you all are doing. So if the person who's submitting the application is not the person we should contact about any potential media coverage, you can designate a separate media contact. Next slide. The applicant organization, so this is just your name you're doing business as. If your legal name is different than your, sort of the name you present to the world. If you aren't sure of your legal name, you can use the link on this slide to be able to check. And then your entity type. So whether you're there's a laundry list, so definitely make sure that you're selecting right, because the type of formation documents that we ask for changes based on your entity type. Next slide. So if you there is a mandatory question by law that we have to ask, that an applicant that controls more than 1% of the stock of the applicant company, if they're an officer or employee of an agency, authority, or other state entity, we cannot allow you to proceed in the application. State employees cannot have ownership interest in applicants to NJEDA programs. So unfortunately, if that is the case, we are not able to accept an application for you. Next slide. So we will be asking for your formation documents. That varies based on your type. Next slide. More information about your organization, your EIN number. Again, please make sure that you type this in very carefully because all of our checks are tied to your employer identification number. So if it comes up that your EIN is unknown, or if you type it in wrong and it turns out the entity that you typed in has all sorts of issues, then we could end up having a problem with being able to process your application. So please make sure that you type this in quite carefully. Phone number, website, your NAICS code, which basically is just a representative of the industry that you operate in. We'll have a drop-down menu, so if you don't know your NAICS code, so you can sort of figure it out. Next slide. You will be required to upload a tax clearance certificate from the New Jersey Division of Taxation that lists the New Jersey Economic Development Authority on it. We have extensive instructions on how you can get your tax clearance certificate from the Division of Taxation online in our FAQs. So don't worry if this is the first time you might be doing this. We have instructions and guidance for you. Next slide. If you are a religiously affiliated applicant, that is absolutely fine. There is no exclusion for religiously affiliated applicants. We just need to ask a few more questions to make sure that we're in compliance with the New Jersey law against discrimination and other non-discrimination ordinances. So you will be prompted to begin filling out that questionnaire. That questionnaire is available on our website today if you want to take a look. Just go to our child care facilities page. Next slide. So these are optional questions, but if you want to provide information about diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to your organization, then we can just gather some of that data from you, including whether you're a certified minority or women-owned business enterprise by the New Jersey Department of Treasury. Next slide. There are some short answer questions we have as well. These are optional and only for tracking purposes, not used to make eligibility determination around the diversity of your leadership team, your board of directors, if that applies, or maybe your executive team, and any diversity related initiatives that are undertaken by your organization. Next slide. Finally, we have information around primary language and language assistance. And again, if you require assistance in any of these languages, you can email languageassistance@njeda.com and we can assist you. I'm going to hand it off to Alex, but before I do, I recognize we're at 11:20 and we still have 218 questions in the chat and a few slides to run through. So we're going to stay on past 11:30 to help answer some of those. Certainly, if there are folks that need to drop off right at 11:30, we certainly understand you've already dedicated a significant amount of your day to hearing about this. This webinar recording will be available online, so if you have to drop off, there will still be opportunity to learn more about this. We also have another webinar coming up on Monday evening at 6 p.m. You can register for that at njeda.com/events. And with that, I will turn it over to Alex to take us through the rest of the application and then bring us home.
The next part of the application will require you, if you're a nonprofit, to upload your IRS determination letter. And then if you are participating in political or lobbying activities, there is a form that you will need to download, complete, and then upload. The next section is starting to talk specifically about the facility where the project is going to happen. You're going to enter its name, whether it's a registered family childcare home or not, the address, and we just want to remind you that only centers are eligible for this round of funding, and FCCs will be eligible in future phases. If you own the space where the project is going to take place, you need to upload evidence of ownership. That'll be like a deed or a mortgage payment statement, things like that. If you lease the space, and we referred to this a couple times already, your landlord will need to be notified of the project and complete the landlord certification that tells us that they're aware of the scope of the project, and they'll sign off on it. And then you'll need to upload that certification as well as a copy of your executed lease. You'll also let us know whether or not you are currently participating in Grow NJ Kids. And you will also notify us in this section about whether or not you currently enroll or in the last 12 months have enrolled a child receiving subsidy, receiving assistance through the CCAP program. We're going to collect some information about your current capacity, about your enrollment capacity, and then the number of classrooms that you have at the proposed site. And we've broken those down by age groups, and they're categorized as you see on your on the slide. And then you also designate whether or not you're operational for 6 or more hours a day. We're also going to collect some information about the number of staff that you have working at that location, and the sources of funding that you receive for that site as well. Your project description and justification is a really, really critical part of your application. There are a series of questions, which you see on your slide, which we're going to be asking each applicant to write a description using these questions as a guide, so that you can give us a picture of the scope of your proposed project. What are all the things that you want to do? What are the issues and challenges that are going to be addressed by these improvements? How is it going to help you maintain or increase the quality of your learning environment? And we really want you all to be very specific that if there are specific licensing issues or violations that have come up in your latest inspection report, that those you highlight those in this description. If you have formal assessments like an ECHRS or other Grow NJ Kids results that you're trying to address by this funding, please include all of that in your description. Certainly, we would like to hear if there are specific health and safety concerns that are going to be addressed as a result of this work. And then if, and this may not be true for every project, but if the project is going to increase access for more children to attend your program, we'd like to hear about that and by how much. If it doesn't apply to your project, please don't worry about including that. This is an optional, not applicable question. And then we also want applicants to think about factors that may impact your timeline, like winter and all the things that come along with weather and how that can disrupt certain contract projects, or if any kind of relocation is going to be necessary as a result of your project. So this is going to give us hopefully a really good picture of what it is that you're trying to accomplish by applying for this funding. We have some sample project descriptions available on our website. We very much encourage you to take a look at them and see how those examples are written, just to give you a little insight into the questions and inspiration of how you might want to put together this document. But we want this to be in your own words. So tell your story. And so you all are the experts about your projects, about your sites. So we want to hear from you what you've been experiencing and what difference this funding will make. We also would like photos of the spaces and the areas and the issues that are going to be addressed. Take as many as possible. I know for myself, I'm a very visual person, so the more pictures, the better. And make sure that the lighting is good and that things are coming through as clearly as you possibly can get them with those photos. We will also be asking applicants to complete this budget template. This is up on our website, so you can take a look at how it's laid out. This is a screenshot of what it looks like. There's some reminders there about the caps on certain funding. Next slide, please. Just want to highlight that as you enter each line item into your budget and you categorize it, it will self-populate the second table you see on the bottom, and it'll calculate for you your total costs and then the breakdown of the different costs, allowable costs under this grant. So you're not going to have to do the math yourself. We wanted to try and make this as easy as possible. And just a reminder here, as you're putting this budget together, this is where you would add, the information that you get from contractor quotes. So make sure that you're double checking that the amounts on the quotes and the ones that you're uploading reflect the same amounts here on this budget, because we will be checking things for that level of accuracy, but also wanted to make it as easy as possible for you all. Next, please. You'll also be completing a project timeline. So this is highlighting sort of the big milestones of your project. This is something that you're going to want to develop alongside your contractor and in collaboration with them. And just a reminder that the projects have to be started within a year of executing your agreement with us and completed within a year of starting construction. And this template is also available on our website. Next, please. If you have design documents, architect drawing, renderings or drawings, or any drawings made by the contractor, you'll have an opportunity to upload those. They're not a requirement, but if you have them, you're going to send them. You're going to enter the total cost of improvements, excluding soft costs in this section. Again, make sure that these numbers that you enter in these next couple sections match the numbers that are in your budget. Next, please. You're going to enter any information you have regarding FFE that you're going to be purchasing and then will be reimbursed for. Installation costs do require a public work registered contractor and abiding by prevailing wage and affirmative action requirements. the documentation that we'll accept in this area are invoices, screenshots, printouts from online, those kinds of things. And again, carefully consider how you're going to use this funding for FFE as opposed to other funding that you may have available, and ensuring that there is no duplication of benefits here. As we've mentioned, you will need to identify, and then you will be entering in this section of the application the information about your public works registered contractor, their contact information, their certification, and their quotes. Next, please. In this section, you'll be providing information about any soft costs that you're including in your project, including a brief description of what they are, the total amount of your soft costs, and then you're going to enter the total project costs in this section as well. Next, please. This next section is you will be answering a series of questions around other funding that you have received, and the purpose of those funds, how you use them. This is to help us ensure that there is no duplication of benefits, and you'll be sort of attesting to that, that you'll be fiscally responsible for the way in which all the various funding streams are being used. Next, please. There's a legal questionnaire that's related to the applicant or any officers or directors affiliated with the facility, and there's quite a few questions, and if there are any legal proceedings pending, you'll be designating those in this section. And then if there are any resolved issues, you'll be uploading copies of that documentation as well. That reflects that final resolution of any legal issues that had been taking place. Next, please. This is a section that you'll fill out that there's a certification that you're not engaged in any prohibitive activities in Russia or Belarus. This is standard EDA and requirement of federal funding. And then you're just going to certify and sign your application, attesting to that you've answered and provided information to the best of your knowledge and it's true and complete. And that's what will make up the application, and we'll have examples and screenshots of what that application looks like when it's ready, and so be on the lookout for that on our website. We've talked a lot about the resources that we have available, so we're just going to walk you through what they are very, very quickly. Next slide, please. There currently is a, I think it's 75 question FAQ that's posted on our website. Many of the amazing questions that you're asking in the Q&A are reflected there, but this is a living document and will be updated regularly. The great questions that are coming in today are really going to help us continue to build out this FAQ. So if you haven't done so already, please take a look at the version that's currently posted, and then look back regularly for updates, and check for the last updated date on it. And within the document, as we add new questions or update answers, we're going to highlight those for you so you can find them really easily and you won't have to dig through what's becoming a really important document, but verges on becoming a novel. But we hope it will be helpful for you. So that's available now. And then next slide, please. We talked a lot about these. This is a full list of all the resources that are on our page. We hope that you will find them helpful to prepare not only the designing of your project, but pulling together your application and ensuring its completeness and providing a really detailed snapshot of the work that you would like to accomplish by receiving these grants. And next slide, please. Language assistance is available. We are going to be translating the application, the FAQs, these slides, and all the applicant planning resources in Spanish. Some of those are in the works. So look back to our website regularly for those additions. And if you require any other kind of assistance, please send an email to languagehhelp@njeda.com, and someone there will be able to assist you. Next, please. Ongoing questions should following this webinar should go to our customer care staff. There are a couple ways to get in touch with them. You can send an email, you can call, and they have a new and very cool chat feature right on our homepage. So lots of different ways to get in touch with us and get your answers, questions answered. Next. Thank you so much. That was a lot of information. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Tara to finish us out. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, everyone. I hope some of you brought snacks. I certainly did during this because this has been intensive and thorough, and we're so grateful for it. All the great questions. We have received almost 500 questions since starting. We are doing our best to try and answer all of them. We also know that you all have very busy days and many of you have children to care for. I would ask our team if we can dig through a few more of the ones that are up there. We will do that, but we are capturing all these questions. We will have a record of it on our that we will have at EDA, and we will use these questions to include in our frequently asked questions. I just wanted to highlight a couple things because if you're staying on the line still and your question hasn't been answered, there are some themes that I'm seeing of some of the questions that we either haven't answered yet or we'll need to just get more clarity and details on our end before we can answer. I've seen a question multiple times about when will phase 2 open up, when will more funding be available. We do not have a firm date for that. However, we are working, as you can tell, hopefully feverishly to try and get all of this funding out and available as quickly as possible. Phase 2 will not open until 2023. You can say that with confidence since we are in the last quarter now almost of 2022. But we are working to, as Alex I think said earlier, learn from and build on what we develop in phase 1 to identify how we can enhance, improve, expand support that we make available in phase 2. So it's not years off, but it's not weeks off, I guess is the answer I would give. And I also want to reinforce that, as we said at the beginning, we have a significant pool of funding to support facility improvements for childcare providers. So in addition to the $55 million that we are using to start this program, and we're only putting out right now between 15 and 25 million of that funding, in part because we want to learn and understand and improve. There was, thanks in part to the tireless advocacy of many folks on this call and the vision and leadership of particularly Senator Ruiz. Yeah, there is additional funding that was put into this year's budget that Governor Murphy signed to support the Thriving by 3 program, which is specifically focused on infant and toddlers. And there was an additional pool of money, an additional $30 million in this year's budget to support additional childcare facility improvements. So something I didn't say at the beginning, but I do think is important context to reinforce the scale of commitment that we have here. So we have about $92.4 million that is going to be dedicated to facility improvements for childcare in the state of New Jersey. The only other state that we know of that is doing something with similar funding, the same kind of money we're using, is the state of California, obviously much, much bigger than us. And they dedicated $100 million. So I think that should reinforce how seriously and broadly we're taking this. So again, just some quick takeaways. I still can't believe there's 738 of you still on, but perhaps I can, because it emphasizes just how crucial this funding is and how scarce it is. We know that traditionally there is not money readily available for childcare facility improvements. It's one of the reasons that we're working to deploy this quickly and smartly, but also encouraging you to work with and consider your other sources of funding, including the DHS stabilization grants, as potential sources, so that you can develop a broader suite of sort of strategic investments into your centers. I saw a number of questions, which we anticipated, about subsidy. We know that many people use different words to describe what a child who is enrolled receiving assistance through the federal child care subsidy. A lot of places, parents and providers call it by the name of their CCR&R. So I saw a lot of questions that were like, is the 4 Cs the same as subsidy? Is programs for parents the same as subsidy? I would guess in 90% of the cases, if you think it is, it probably is, but you have to check. So check with your CCR&R, but in most cases it probably is. I did see questions, a number of questions, again, just trying to highlight some themes here if we haven't gotten to yours specifically, because we are going as fast as we can, but there are a lot and we want to answer them correctly. A lot of questions I saw about, we bought a center or we transferred ownership, but it's under the same license. Are we eligible? If the center, the location was licensed by DCF and you transferred the ownership, you may be eligible. If that doesn't disqualify you, we need to get the details about the transfer of, the transfer of the license, but the date of licensure of the center has to be before June 4th, 2021. If you bought that license last week, you may still potentially be eligible. Similarly, again, just trying to hit some key points because we're trying to do frequently asked questions. I did see a number of questions about, we want to build a new building, we want to add on to our building, we want to expand. This funding is not allowable for what's considered major construction, which would include an addition or major renovation to a building. So if you have, I saw there was one question that said, I'm a 1-floor center, I want to add a 2nd floor. This funding would not be usable for that specific plan. If you are a building that has a space within it that already exists and you want to turn that existing space into something that you want to use for your childcare center, that may be eligible. But expanding your square footage, building on, adding a wing, that is not eligible. And as a reminder, and again, I know we've thrown so much at you, and this is the short version. So, we appreciate your patience. But remember that the money that we are providing has to be for projects that total $200,000. So major additions and construction would not meet that in current day costing. So just something to keep in mind. I saw a number of questions about Child Protective Services subsidies. Let us get back to you on that. It's a great question. We need to confirm what what the protocols are there. So I don't think we have an answer on that. So for those of you who submitted that excellent question, look for it on our frequently asked questions document. There was questions, and I just want to drive this home too, something Alex said about the infant and toddler space. So just to kind of reiterate, you can use these funds to create a new pre-K room or another preschool room. You can use them to create an infant and toddler room. You can use them to take a preschool room and turn it into an infant and toddler room. You cannot use them to take an infant and toddler room and turn it into a preschool room. So our funding cannot be used to replace or supplant infant and toddler space. You don't have to add infant and toddler space. You don't even have to serve infants and toddlers. But as a result of this funding, you can't take it and reduce the space that you have available for infant and toddlers. And that's because of just the acuity of need in the state around the lack of infant and toddler space in many communities. There's also a bunch of questions I've seen, and again, I'm trying to sort of give some highlights for those of you who maybe are wondering why we haven't gotten to you or frustrated that we haven't answered your question yet. There's a nuance here around summer camps and around before and after school, and we have children who receive subsidy for before and after school, like essentially for scenarios where you offer care, but it's not a center 6 hours plus a day every day. Let us get back to you on that with the FAQs. But I saw a number of situations like that. And again, that I really appreciate the breadth of providers that are here, that you offer different scenarios. And so we need to just dig into that a bit more. And just a few more things, and I think we will wrap up. Again, we capture all of these questions, so we haven't gotten to yours yet. This is it's not intentional. It's just trying to keep up with the staggering demand. I saw a lot of questions about the subsidy enrollment. So we already talked about the fact that you might have a child who receives subsidy, but you might not call it that. You might call it by the name of your CCR&R, et cetera. A lot of questions about, like, when does the child have to have received it, or do they have, what if they leave in the future? So the eligibility is at the time when you apply, you have to have on that day or 12 months prior to that day, you need to have had a child who was enrolled, who was receiving subsidy. If the day after you apply that child leaves, that's okay. If that child left 6 months before you applied, that's okay. If the child left 18 months before you applied, you're not eligible. So it's really within the window of 1 year from when you apply, did you have a child who received subsidy? So I saw a bunch of questions of, like, we had someone who left in August, or we have someone starting in 2 weeks. It's all tied to the date of when you apply. Just looking again quickly to see if there's any major themes that I'm missing. I also saw a number of questions, and we will address these in the FAQs in more detail about, to the extent any of us can predict the future, what happens if in the future, fill in the blank, the landlord sells the building, we have to close, et cetera. So we are, we are putting in some more details. We have some language in our frequently asked questions and would ask that you look at that. We are asking that you commit to staying licensed at the location for 4 years. We know that things happen. I mean, imagine if we had done this in 2019 and, centers had to close because of COVID. So, there are extenuating circumstances, but if you, for instance, know that your landlord plans to sell your building in a year, it would not be prudent or smart or advisable to apply for this and then have the funding just not be well used. Also, a reminder, your landlord has to provide a certification that they approve of what you're proposing to do if you lease your building, even if you lease it for $1 from a church or a school district, et cetera. You still need to get that landlord sign off. I saw a handful of questions about providers that operate within either religious facilities or religiously affiliated facilities. There are very, I think Emily talked about this some, there are very specific details that need to be clarified there. So we're not going to try and just sort of guesstimate, but there are some details and a questionnaire that'll need to get filled out. We will provide more clarity on that. And I hope one of the takeaways from today, and especially for those of you who are still with us, is we are really trying to help and have as much back and forth and communication as possible. We're not going to be able to answer every question. We're not going to be able to answer every question the way you want, probably. There are a number of conditions on this funding that are not in our control. They're federal requirements. So, but we are committed to supporting this sector by making this funding as accessible and user-friendly as possible. So please know that when you apply, we expect there'll be a lot of back and forth with the team at EDA and with applicants. So that's how we have committed to other programs, and it's certainly the plan here. We're staffing up our team to be able to do just that. So know that there will be, as we're building this brand new program, there will have to be some back and forth. The last couple things that I think for everyone's sake, we should probably wrap up. Just to reiterate, I saw a bunch of questions about, I already did something. Can I get paid? What if I already did something? Just to hit this home again, this money, our money, is only for future projects, things you haven't done yet, things that haven't been paid for yet. There is another program at the EDA, and we've put it in the responses to some of the questions. It's also linked in our frequently asked questions, that actually is for situations just like that. It's called the Main Street Small Business Improvement Grant. So someone had written, like, I replaced a shed in on my playground, or I had done, some other improvements. That program is something where you can get reimbursed for up to $50,000 for prior facility improvements, and you can apply for and you can receive funding from that program and this program, but they are different. So if you want money from this program for something you already did, you're not getting it. You would have, but that program exists for that exact reason. And then there were a ton of questions around like specific uses. We have a very exhaustive list of eligible uses. Would I encourage you to look at that? It's drawn broadly from what's been done in both the literature around healthy childhood environments, as well as just what other government and state-led facility improvement programs look like. So just encourage you to take a look at that. Last couple things, and then I think we're just going to have to call it. So, and again, we're doing our best to try and get you these answers. I saw questions about opportunity zones. I know that's a fairly specific question or a specific term. The eligibility requirement there is no. Let me put it back up. If you are in an opportunity zone, that means that you would be eligible for the 40% of funding that we have set aside, but you're not like automatically guaranteed it. It just means we've set aside a portion of funding for providers that meet that criteria. But if you're not in an opportunity zone, that's fine. You can still absolutely still apply if you meet the other criteria. It's all based on where the place is located, not the addresses of the children who are served. So if you're in an opportunity zone but serve children who don't live there, that's fine. If you are located outside of an opportunity zone but serve children who live in an opportunity zone, that's not material to this program. I also want to apologize. We had one oversight on the CCR&Rs. We inadvertently left out Rutgers Southern Regional CCR&R. They are included, so apologies. That was just a typo on our end. The application materials, as you likely saw, is quite dense, is quite thorough. And we had seen questions around technical assistance. And so we are working to purchase technical assistance to make it available to the broader childcare community to help with this application. We know it's hard, we know it's complex. We had been hoping to have it available at the time that we launched the application. We just couldn't make the timing work. So we are working to do that, but we also know and expect that you will lean heavily on the CCR&Rs. We met with them yesterday and basically said we need their help, we need them to work with you. And that's also why we have built in both a lot of customer service, customer support here at the EDA, but also expect that like once you apply, that will start an ongoing conversation and relationship. It isn't just you send it in, it isn't like you drop it in a mailbox and then hope to hear back 6 months later. We do expect to communicate quite a bit. And I think the last thing I'll hit, unless our team thinks we need to emphasize anything else, a bunch of questions about multiple locations. I saw that come up a lot. And the question around like I have a location, I have run 5 centers. So there's 2 distinctions. There's your employer identification number, so like your business identification number, and then you have your license number from the Department of Children and Families. The Department of Children and Families number is, we can accept applications from up to 2 of those license numbers under 1 employer identification number. If you are one EIN and you have 10 locations and 10 licenses under DCF, you can apply for a maximum of 2 of those locations. You cannot apply for all of them. So that came up quite a bit. And actually, sorry, one last thing. I saw a bunch of back and forth about Grow NJ Kids. And I just want to reiterate, you do not have to be enrolled in Grow NJ Kids when you apply. However, you do have to commit that you will enroll within 1 year of getting the grant from EDA. So I saw some comments saying we don't want to be part of Grow NJ Kids, or we're not interested in Grow NJ Kids. First, I would encourage you to kind of revisit and understand what Grow NJ Kids is today and what that means, and learn more about that before, so you can just make an informed decision. But if you fully never intend to be part of Grow NJ Kids, then you would not be compliant with the grant, because we're requiring you to commit to enrolling within 1 year. So I think with that, we're almost at 12 o'clock. The application we are aiming to have released in October. We will be publicizing and updating our website with information. It is more important to submit a complete and accurate information application than to submit it at 9 a.m. the day it opens. And again, there is going to be an opportunity to go back and forth if there are questions and issues that come up. So in the interest of everyone's time, I think we're going to end it here. Again, we have all these questions captured. We are going to do our best to go back and incorporate them into our FAQs document. If you've already been looking at our FAQs document, we will do something where, like, if it's an updated one, it'll be a little, I don't know, red headline or a little mark or something, so you'll know you don't have to reread the whole thing if you've already read it. And so with that, I would just ask everyone to, please be in touch. Thank you so much. I can't believe we have over 500 people still on, almost at lunchtime. And again, just thank you so much for everything that you all do to support and strengthen the state's childcare system. And huge thanks to the awesome team at EDA, who has been soldiering on for the last couple hours, and hopefully been able to get a lot of your questions answered. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you all very much. This ends our webinar.